So, welcome to Augmented Teachings, where we'll talk about the things that inspire us to think better, feel better, and in turn be better. I'll be your host, Todd Michael Jackson. I have my co-host, Brandi Pagano. How you doing, Brandi?
I'm so great. How are you today?
Good.
So I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
What does it mean to you to be woke?
To be woke?
Yeah. What's your interpretation of that?
My interpretation is being woke means you're aligning yourself to who we are back home in heaven.
Yeah.
That's what it means to me.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't exploit each other for money back home. We don't have corporations back home.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have hate back home. We don't have fear back home. We don't have a me mentality. We have a we mentality.
I love that.
And souls now are deciding to say enough's enough. I want to be what I feel is right, and what they're feeling is right is how we are back home in heaven. Everybody thinks about where they're going, and that's great, but think about where you've come from. And that's the real important part.
And where we come from and where we're going is oneness.
Yes.
Unity.
Oneness.
Love.
We.
Equality.
Yes.
We. Right?
Exactly. And because we're all part of the same source, and we all return back to the same source.
Absolutely.
Right. I know a lot of people will tell you differently, but that's the truth of it. According to the testimonies of people that have died and come back, they all say we all go back home and rejoin with Source, which is God.
So, what are some characteristics, do you think, of somebody that is woke? How are they living their lives differently than people who are not?
They have a different set of objectives, right? A lot of the millennials and a lot of the Generation Z are not putting so much time and energy and effort into materialism and ego and showing off. A lot of them are putting more effort into creating experiences for themselves.
Yes.
Right. Where they're going to live a little smaller, and be able to afford to have more experiences and take back home. Because in the end, you don't take the house home, you only take the experiences within the home.
The memories, the
and
feelings.
The experiences that you are afforded now by having a little smaller home to go do things, Maybe you got to go, to Europe, or you got to go to wherever you want to go, to the Grand Canyon, because you had a little less financial burden. And people are putting priorities on that now, where they didn't in the past. It was all about what did you have instead of what did you do, with this whole capitalistic, materialistic mentality that we've had in the old paradigm, in the old shift. That's one. Another way I see being woke is of helping their situation, and that's basically what it's about, helping their situation find happiness, where happiness wasn't an objective to, say, my parents, the boomers, it was all about having a job and producing money, and quality of life wasn't that important. It was about, just putting the food on the table, and that person didn't matter. Unfortunately, with those situations, a lot of the time, you don't bring the best version of yourself home. Right? Like with my father, he worked for Edison, and he made good money, but sometimes during storms, windstorms, rainstorms, he'd be gone for 2-3 nights in a row, sleeping in the cab of his truck. His quality of life was non-existent, and, I thank him for the efforts he put into that.
Yes.
But he let himself down a little bit because he wasn't able to have a lot of experiences. It was work, come home, drink Coors Light, and then go back out and work. And that was it. That was his life. And he didn't get to know me that well, He didn't have friends. He just worked. That was his job, is just to sacrifice, which is great. It's commendable to a point. But then you have to be able to create wonderful experiences to take back home, because those are your treasures. Working is good, but doing the same thing over and over and over and over isn't anything really that special to take back home and say, look, I did this for you, God. I made this experience to share, instead of creating the same experience over and over, That's another thing. Quality of life is more important to people that are waking up. Right. Not only that, with the job themselves, having a job that allows them to have more quality time,
More meaningful experiences.
Yeah. And that's why the whole quiet quitting movement has started.
What's that?
Quiet quitting is a lot of technical jobs and stuff, office jobs. You have the certain hours you work, and then you have all these extra things you're supposed to do not at work.
Oh.
Right? And people are like, no, I'm not doing that part. I'm not quitting. I'm quiet quitting. I'm giving you your 40 hours, and that's it. I'm not going to work 40 hours here and then work another 15 to 20 hours at home doing all this extra stuff on my own computer, on my own time. I'm not doing that, So we have to really look at where these people's mentalities are coming from. And it's coming from a place of self-love. It's not of hate or ignorance. It's of self-love. And when you love yourself, you're better able to love those people around you.
And when we love ourselves, we know that we are loving God, because we are here to create an experience for God as an aspect of God.
Right.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
And so it's not that we're, saying, oh, I don't want to work. I don't want to do this. No, it's that I want to have these experiences that are more meaningful.
Right. And I think when people you can look at it through negative eyes and be like, they just don't want to work. It's like, no, they don't want to be worked and mistreated.
Right.
They don't want to work and just stack boxes in a trailer all day. That's not fulfilling work. And people are trying to find even work that's fulfilling for them. I may be loading this trailer, but it's going to help homeless people. Oh, well, that's more fulfilling than, working somewhere else, where they're just trying, to make money and exploit, whoever they can to get that load of that trailer, And when people realize that it's not out of malice, it's just done out of wanting to create a better experience, because every lifetime is its own jewel that we live here. Every lifetime that we have here on this planet is another chance to produce a higher vibration for our soul as we learn unconditional love and acceptance for all. And it's easier to do when you're not forced to work ungodly amount of hours. You're bringing a quality person to every experience, whether it be at the grocery store or the library or wherever you go, or even at home. You bring a better version of yourself because you're not stressed out and overburdened.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a win-win for yourself and for everybody around you. And quality of life needs to be part of that aspect. And that's what being woke is. A lot of these woke millennials and Generation Z are saying enough's enough. I'm not going to live like the previous generations.
So I know that when we come together and we have these conversations, we are, assisting ourselves and assisting all of humanity, really, in raising that consciousness.
Right.
And awakening to our true nature.
Right. Our true nature of who we truly are. Everybody thinks we're just what these bodies represent, and we're so much more than what these bodies can contain.
Yes, we are.
Just a little bit of us are in these bodies. And as we learn unconditional love and acceptance, we start finding synchronicities and connecting to the divine, which is a beautiful thing. God works with us and through us, right?
And for us. Absolutely.
So it's a symbiotic relationship. We're here as a labor of love for God. So God's like happy we're even down here doing this. And God wants us to see us do the best version of ourselves. Love to see that, right?
Yes.
I mean, sometimes we have to toil, but God doesn't want you to have to toil all day, every day, forever, Sometimes we have situations where we have to do hardships, Sometimes we have days where we have to move all day, right? But that's not our job. Our job isn't to toil in the fields all day long. Our job is to have a quality of life also.
And we can, I think it's up to the individual interpretation of what that quality of life is, because there can be people who are, working in warehouses and, throwing boxes and things like that. And they can be having an amazing time of their life because they're here creating this experience for themselves. And they're not they're not allowing that to dictate their whole life,
right?
Their whole experience.
Right.
That's one aspect of their experience, right?
Right. There are some. I worked in warehouses 15 years, so I always use that as an example, and that was always the worst job, right? Loading the trailers is always the worst job. So I always use that as the experience of not wanting to do, right? Because it's very physically laborsome.
Yes, it is.
And doing it once in a while, it's fine. But when you're doing it, for months,
yes,
it gets to you. And there are a few, but for most people, they're not trying to get into the trailers. They're trying to find a place where they can have more joy. Especially when you're in that trailer by yourself. It's like solitary confinement mixed with hard labor, and it still pays usually close to minimum wage, and it's like 2 punishments in one. And
well, because then you're having to work more and more and more and harder just to kind of quote unquote make ends meet, because we're conditioned to think that that's what we have to do.
Right.
We have to work more to make more money. To what? But then you don't have any quality of life because you don't have any time to enjoy an experience outside of what you're doing to try to quote unquote make this money.
Right. And that's another thing, like what I was saying with the trailers. You're so exhausted, you don't have time, or you don't have the energy to enjoy life anymore. You just want to go home and crash. You're not able to even bring the best version of yourself home because you're so exhausted from doing that. I think a lot of employers, they've always in the past have looked at the amount of education that was necessary for the job to determine what they're going to pay for it. If you have a degree, if you have a high school diploma, it's going to pay a certain amount for certain jobs that require that. Certain jobs require a 4-year degree. They're going to pay more for that, generally. This one needs a 6-year degree. It's going to pay more, generally. But now you're going to have to start looking at labor intensity. This job is super labor intensive, and nobody wants to do it. They're going to have to start paying on labor intensity, not just skill level, on your computer or whatever, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Or your mental capability. They're going to have to look at physical amount of duty that the person's going to have to take to do that job, So it's kind of crazy that they're going to have to totally realign how they look at the world as far as employment is concerned.
Well, because we're all going through this individual and collective massive shift, really. And I think we've talked about this before. Everything looks the same, but it's not the same. We are in a different paradigm, and so things are going to have to recalibrate to match this new shift that we're in.
Right.
And I think that that's what's happening right now.
It is, and it's kind of like putting people on edge because things aren't lining up like they used to. We were all kind of like homogenized in the middle, and now we're splitting, and we can't figure out why. And it's like this new cycle has started. Yeah. And older souls are starting to awaken faster than younger souls, and that's basically what it boils down to. They're gravitating towards a more enlightened mentality, while younger souls are moving much slower or not moving at all. They might even be doubling down on fear and judgment because they're actually putting their heels in the ground. Yeah. Because they don't want to adjust to the higher vibration of acceptance and love, which is God. A lot of people think religion is God, but no, God is love.
So you think that resistance is just because a fear, because they haven't been through it before?
Maybe. There is a possibility of that. They haven't been through it before. Some of it could be ego. I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to be... my ideas of what God is are right, and my ego will not allow me to bend from that. Yeah. That's part of it too. Like I said, and some of it's fear. And some of it just status quo. That's the way my dad was. That's the way my mom was. So I want to be that way too. Yeah.
This is the way it's always been, and I'm not going to question this or change it.
Right. Nothing's changed, right? And it's just the same. Why are all you guys changing? Right? And that's what it looks like. And it is kind of true.
Yeah, and I think that scares people. Because they don't want to be, like left in the dust, so to speak.
Right.
When everything is shifting and changing around them, and they're so tied to those old beliefs and that belief system, they think that everything is crumbling away, and they're feeling lost.
Right. And that's the whole shift of we're moving away from fear And older souls are moving away from fear, and younger souls are just staying with it, staying with the fear a little longer. And, eventually those souls will be more comfortable in the higher vibration of light and acceptance for all. And but it's going to take time. It's funny because I've talked to people, and there's, like I said, there's older souls moving quickly, and there's younger souls moving slowly, and there's souls that are kind of like in the middle. And one day they're thinking I'm more right, and then after the last 5 years, now they're leaning more left. It's just they're actually starting to gravitate towards the acceptance and away from the fear and the judgment. Mm-hmm. And then people on the right are saying, wait, why are they doing this? Why are they moving? They're traitors to their own. It's like, no, they're maybe traitors to religion, but they're not traitors to God, because God is acceptance for all.
Right, and that's the difference.
Right, exactly. No religion owns God. So everybody has to remember that, And so I want to talk about next is the why. Why do we do what we do here on this planet? We go through all these trials and tribulations, and for what purpose?
What is the purpose?
Well, the purpose is, it's very simple. We come down here and go through all these trials and tribulations, raising our vibration a little at a time, every lifetime, right? So that we can go back home and eventually give our souls back to God as a beautiful, multifaceted jewel, right? And when we go back home, the love we feel is so massive, so intense, that it's indescribable here on earth.
Mm-hmm. There are no words.
There are no words. So I'm going to describe it. So God's love is so powerful that it would be impractical to feel God's full love here. Potential. Because it's just so overpowering. If two souls ever met in the street and gave themselves an embrace and a hug, and feel each other's God within each other, we wouldn't be able to get them apart. They would clamor to stay together because the feeling would be so amazing. One of the things that they talk about when they're rising up to heaven is that God's love is so intense, they'll ask the guardian angel to slow down so that they can gather themselves, because God's love is so powerful and the vibration is so intense. And it takes a while to adjust, especially since they've been in a corporeal body for so long, right? And they go back to heaven, and God's love is everywhere, and it's just like unbelievable love and joy. Their heart just sings with love. And that's one of the main reasons why we do it, because our love for that love is so intense.
Yes.
We choose to come here and work the puzzle here, so that we can make that love even more lovely, so to speak, because we add our soul to the collective of a high vibration. We are actually raising the vibration of heaven a little bit more every time. So we're always trying to work on ourselves here on earth again and again, and making a more positive change back home, because we are pieces of God. So when we turn back home, we are again God in vibration and in thought and in every aspect. There was one time where my dad had passed, and I saw him in a dream. And in that dream, he was talking to me, and I went ahead and I said, "Dad, you're dead. I'm gonna go ahead and give you an embrace anyway." And I embraced him in my dream. And at that moment, I felt God's love course through my body. And it was so magnificent. It was so vibrationally powerful. I knew at that moment that vibration would have torn my atoms apart if they would have been in my body here on earth. And at that moment in time, you lose all your human qualities are gone. All your corporeal qualities are gone. And you will just scream out with love and joy. Which it's not the kind of person I am here on earth. But at that moment, I didn't have a corporeal body anymore.
Yeah.
I was just part of the source again. So
you're back in that ocean of love.
Back in the ocean of love, and man, it felt good.
Yeah.
It felt good.
There's nothing restricting that love.
Right. And I mean, we have love that we feel here. You know, we have love for a spouse. We have love for a child or a parent. It's only a fraction of the love that we feel all the time back home. These vessels kind of restrict us, a lot of us, in ways that we can't feel it. We can't feel God's love directly at its full magnitude. And that's a shame, because if we knew, you know, just for a moment, not all the time, because like I said, it'd be impractical. It'd be the most addictive drug in the world. But if we felt it just for a second, and then you'd nod and be like, now I know why I do what I do. Now I know why I come down here and I toil and I work through all these relationship issues, and I work through all these financial and all these other issues to try to figure out how I'm going to look at the world through loving eyes. And that's the real hard part. You know, sometimes we get really burdened with life in general. But we choose to come down here in the hopes that we can really work that puzzle and get a little better every single time.
So knowing what you know, and coming from the place of understanding, when we are going through any challenging times, any challenging experiences, how does one remember that we are here to create and we are here to experience and take those memories back home? Because sometimes it can be challenging to forget when, you know, we know that when things are happy and we're vibing good, and we're, you know, in a I call it like in the state of flow state.
Right.
You know, it's easy to remember those things because everything is joyous and bliss, and we're feeling that love and we're feeling those high vibrations. But sometimes we can allow the outside circumstances to kind of bring us down. Right. And we forget.
We do forget. And I think with like the way the shift is happening now, and with people coming out and explaining what the purposes are, you know, a lot of people think that the purposes are you gotta worship Jesus, and you're good to go, right? That doesn't solve anything, you know. The purposes are to work the puzzle of unconditional love. So people are like, okay, well, I'm feeling bad today because of this situation and this situation, and they're finding ways, because that puzzle doesn't have a finished picture. That puzzle is yours.
Exactly.
So
it's
your
different.
tapestry is special. So when you know, now it can't always be good all the time, but at least you can learn to put stuff on the other side of the teeter-totter. So when you have something that's negative, you have to be able to mentally put something on the other side of the teeter-totter to balance it out, so that you don't feel so down, right? Not that being down sometimes is not beneficial, because you can't have good feelings without bad feelings.
It's that contrast, right?
Contrast, right. But sometimes, you know, you need to put something on the other side of the teeter-totter to balance it out, and you have to find greener pastures for yourself. So now that you know that the goal is to bring the best version of yourself to your whole life, to your relationships, you know, to your children, to your work, to, you know, everything, right? To all your encounters, the best version. Now people are realizing, hey, maybe I shouldn't do this, and I'd rather do that. You know, they're finding solutions now.
They're finding what works for them.
What works for them, so that they can limit the times that they're overwhelmed, because they're putting themselves in better situations.
Right, because how we respond and react sometimes to each situation is going to continue to create more of that experience.
Right.
So if there's something that I'm having a hard time accepting,
right,
I have two choices. I can respond in a maybe better way, or I can just react and match whatever that vibration is that's around me.
Right.
But again, if I continue to react, I'm just going to continue to create more of that.
Right.
So I personally use the power of affirmations. And that reminds me that I am a conscious co-creator of my experiences because I am creating with the Spirit of God.
Right.
And I don't want to take all those experiences that are unpleasant home, because then I'm going to have to recreate them over and over again. So that's what helps me.
Right. And I notice a lot of times people are like, how can I fix all these problems around me, when it's kind of just simply fix the problems within you.
Absolutely.
And then those problems fall away.
They do.
Right.
And so when when I am faced with a challenge, I ask myself, what is within me that I need to take a look at?
Right.
Where is in my consciousness could I allow for some healing?
Right.
And for some revelation.
Right. As we change our vibration internally, our situation starts slowly chipping away here and there, showing more light through, and having more fulfilling experiences. And we're like, well, there's nothing wrong with me, and there's nothing wrong with you. You're perfect exactly the way you are. But sometimes if we want our surroundings to change, we have to look within and actually start doing work, start meditating and opening yourself up to understanding yourself, understanding how you work and what your triggers are, and learning how to adjust and present yourself to yourself in a brighter light.
I like that.
And then eventually these things start falling away, and you start finding better environments.
Well, I like to quote Dr. Ernest Holmes, because that's what I've studied the most in my recent years. And Dr. Ernest Holmes says, life is like a mirror and will reflect back to the thinker that which he thinks into it.
Right.
And so when I can remember that, and I can remember that I am a spiritual being having a human experience, I can kind of take myself out of the conditions in this, 3D reality that I call it.
Right.
And it helps me to shift through that and maneuver. It's like, okay, this is the 3D reality right here. This is the condition that I'm in. This is the experience I'm having.
Right.
But I go back to that higher vibration and that higher, state of consciousness, and I start to shift my thinking.
Right. And that's all it takes is a will to do it.
Right.
A will, and sometimes ask your guardian angels for a little help. Give me a little guidance.
Yes, some assistance, please.
I would like a little nudge here, a nudge there, make me see something I need to see.
Right.
Be in a place where I need to be, so to see something or whatever it is, and help guide me out of this situation, so I can bring a better version of myself to this world and back home eventually in heaven.
And you said, being willing.
Being willing.
The first step is being willing.
Right.
The second step is being open and receptive, because there's always signs and messages and synchronicities that are always present.
Right.
I think that we are never not immersed in all of that. It's always there, right?
Yes.
We just have to have senses to perceive that.
Right. I always make jokes with my guardian angels. I said, make it obvious, because I don't pick up on things very easy. Make this obvious for me, okay? Thanks, guys.
Right. Clear and concise, please. Thank you.
Knock me in the head with it. Let me bump into that thing I'm supposed to see. Then I might catch it.
Spirit will always give us signs.
Yeah.
They will either tap you with a feather.
Right.
If you're not open and receptive to that, you might not notice it, right? That little subtlety.
Yeah.
So then next time it might be a little brick. It's like, oh, did you get that message?
Yeah.
Okay, no. What are you going to wait? The dump truck that's going to fall on you?
Exactly.
What's it going to be?
Felt that one. That one left a scar, right?
Oh, I needed to look at that way. Okay. So yes, being open, being willing.
Yes.
Being receptive.
Yes.
Because God cannot do through us unless we allow.
Right. And I think that's what people are awakening to. That's being woke.
Yes.
Awakening to God isn't a book. God isn't a religion. God is love flowing through us. And we have to work that God within us.
Absolutely.
Right. So I think we're good. What do you think, Brandi?
I think we touched on some really great things today.
Great.
And it's been a great conversation.
It has been. All right.
So I'm going to continue to be willing
Yes, me
And
too.
stay open.
Yes.
And stay receptive.
Exactly.
Looking forward to our next conversation.
Me too.
Thank you.
All right. Everybody have love and laughter in your heart.
That's
and
right.
keep moving forward.
Take care.
Bye-bye.